Hello, grade 11. Today we're going to be covering chapter 11, lesson 2, history of Western Europe. As you can see, the history of nation through the 1800s, actually modern humans lived in Europe only for 40 years. But early people were hunters and gatherers than farmers. As population grew, settlements became towns, so people began to make metal tools. They discovered how to make bronze by smelting and fusing tin and copper. This process is called smelting, and this was the beginning of the Bronze Age. Meanwhile, the Romans spread from the southern Europe and Western Europe. They controlled France and most of Europe within 100 years. What do you know about the Roman Empire domination of Western Europe? Actually, the Roman Empire conquered France and most of Germany within the next 100 years. The Roman Empire also managed to occupy the United Kingdom as well. When the Romans came, they brought their language, which was the Latin language, and their technologies. However, the Roman Empire eventually got too big to be able to protect its lands, and the local tribes in these lands managed to free themselves from the Roman Empire. As time went, invaders threatened the region. Why? Actually, for three reasons. The first one, there were no strong governments to bring order. The second one, it was invaded from the east, driving Germanic people. And the third one, it got too big to be able to protect its lands. What are the local tribes of Western Europe that managed to conquer the Roman Empire? There were three main tribes. The Franks, they managed to liberate France from the Roman Empire. The Huns, they managed to liberate Germany from the Roman Empire, and the Angles, or the Saxons, or the Anglo-Saxons, which managed to liberate United Kingdom. When Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire, they spread quickly in the year AD 312. The Roman Catholic Church became a major force in Western Europe. It helped to preserve order and played a very important role in education. So when the church became in power, he helped in preserving the order after having a very weak government, and also it played a very important role in the education. Also, the system of feudalism arose. Under this system, kings gave land to noble warriors. Also, they became rich. The nobles in turn gave kings military services. These nobles became knights and rich at the same time. Today we call this period of transition between ancient and modern times the medieval age. Let's go back to the medieval age. The most important rituals in medieval age was the religious pilgrimage. What was meant by pilgrimage? It's a religious tradition where Christians visit the holy place of Christianity in Jerusalem. How did crusades start from Western Europe on the Islamic world? In the late 1000s, Muslims controlled Jerusalem and pushed away the Christian Roman Empire out of it. Pope Urban II, the leader of Roman Catholic Church, called the European kings for a crusade against the Muslims to restore Jerusalem for Christianity. Many kings and nobles sent large armies to the Middle East to do this and were successful at the beginning. However, the Muslims managed to take the city back, and many following crusades failed to take the city from the Muslims. Actually, there were 7 crusades. What was the effect of the failure of the crusades on the Western Europe? Many soldiers who failed to take Jerusalem from Muslims went back to Europe with new ideas about the world after seeing how rich and advanced the Islamic world was. They used these ideas later to change their societies and advance their economies. Traders and merchants began to play a bigger role in town. People with special skills such as metalsmiths and carpenters began to organize guilds. Actually, guilds were not as powerful as the noblemen or the church, but they helped town to grow stronger. So before the Crusades, we have 2 important parts of the society. It was a church, which has also the kings, and we have the noblemen and which were very powerful at this time. But after the Crusades, there was a third party joined this powerful people, which is the guilds. Actually, it wasn't as powerful as the noblemen, but it has also rich people with special skills, such as carpenting or to be a metal smith. So the society changed a lot after the Crusades. Then we move to another important event in this history. What do you know about the 100 Years' War? It's actually a war that happened between England and France in the year of 1337 and lasted more than 100 years. That's why we call it the 100 Years' War. In the start of the war, England had many victories and took much of the French lands. However, by the end of the war, France restored its occupied lands again. And during that war, a terrible spread of plague happened in Europe and killed millions of people. Actually, it was called the Black Death. What the Europeans questions, or why the Europeans questioned the practices of the Catholic Church in the year of 14 and 1500s. Actually, at this time, the church was very powerful, but the Romans started to question their practices. The Roman Catholic Church was wealthy and had power over aspects of society. Many Europeans had problems with the practices of the Roman Catholic Church during the year of 14 and 1500. Like, for example, the Bible was only available in Latin, which was a language that only priests know. People wanted translation for the Bible so they can read it. But there was not any available translations. The second one, the church sold indulgences. And indulgences are divine pardons from the sins of a person in exchange for money that persons pay to be forgiven. So if you have committed any kind of crime or a sin, you can go to the priest and ask them for the indulgences so you can confess your sins, and in return, you get forgiveness from God. But you only get this kind of forgiveness if you pay money. So it led us to another part of this era, which to talk about Martin Luther. Martin Luther is a German priest who wrote the 95 Theses, a document that protested the bad practices of the Catholic Church and said they're meant to give to the church money and authority, but not for the sake of God. He declared that only trust in God will give people forgiveness, not money. They pay for the church. He wrote this in the year of 1517. The religious movement he started is called the Protestant Reformation, which is a very important part of this history and the beginning of another aspect of the church. Next to the Catholic, there was also the Protestant people. The Catholic Church expelled Martin Luther from the church for protesting, but his ideas started to attract followers all over Europe. His followers became known as the Protestants or the Lutherans. As the Catholic Church power weakened because of this movement, England kings were being forced to share power with new law-making body called the Parliament. It was made up of two houses. The House of Lords represented the nobles and the House of Commons represented the common citizens, usually guild members and business owners too. Which will move us to the Age of Enlightenment. What is the Age of Enlightenment? It is a period in Europe during the year of 16 and 1700 where a wave of discoveries and scientific observation changed people's beliefs in many subjects. During this period, European explorers were discovering the world using ships, and astronomers were exploring the solar system. What is the heliocentric theory? It is a theory that made by a Polish astronomer called Nicolas Copernicus. After the year of observation to the movement of planets and the stars in the sky, he concluded that the sun is the center of the solar system and all the planets, including Earth, which rotates around the sun. Before this theory, people or the church believed that Earth is the center of the universe and that all planets rotate around Earth. That's all for part one. Let's meet again for part 2.